sometimes as moms, we feel pressured to be the ones to do everything. We're on the PTA meetings, we're on student council, we're bringing in freshly baked goods, and and we're doing all these things. And I thought, I can't do all of this the way other mothers are doing. So how do I set myself up so that I'm having that balance in my life with the situation I'm being dealt with right now, and still, be able to live in an authentic way?
Hi there, Soulful Mama. Welcome to the Soul Care Mom podcast. I'm Catherine Wilde of soulcaremom.com. I'm a mom of 3 amazing kids, a soul care mom coach, and a yoga and meditation teacher. I've helped hundreds of women, and I'm here to help you feel calm and find your unshakable confidence as a mom. If you're ready to stop living in survival mode and you're ready to drop the mom guilt and overwhelm, this podcast is for you. Think of this as a lunch date with a girlfriend. Grab a cup of tea and get cozy. It's time to get honest and vulnerable and shift the traditional mindset around motherhood. Be sure to subscribe to be the first to know when new episodes are released. Get ready to grow and feel empowered as a mom. I'm here for you, Mama. Let's get started. Have you ever wondered how to thrive not only as a mom, but in all the areas of your life? All of the aspects of our life are interconnected. Looking at your life from this holistic perspective can help you to nourish all the areas of your life so you can truly thrive. Today, my guest on the Soul Care Mom podcast is Keisha Blair, a trained economist and founder of the Institute on Holistic Wealth. She shares her empowering journey as well as practices you can use and implement today to help you create holistic wealth in your life and your motherhood journey.
Hi, Keisha. Thank you so much for joining me today.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me here, Catherine.
I'm so happy and honored to connect with you in this way. And you wrote a beautiful book called Holistic Wealth, and you have an incredible story. You were widowed at the age of 31, just 8 weeks after giving birth to your second son. And in your book, you talk about the detours that life can hand us. And this was a big one. Can you share with us a bit about how you navigated this significant detour in your life?
Sure. So thank you again for having me, Catherine. It's great to be here and to share this journey with your audience. So it was quite the detour, as I said in the book. And, I was in my career. I was, climbing the corporate ladder, seemingly doing great things. I had one child at the time. He was 3, and I had just given birth to my second child. And then my husband died 8 weeks after I gave birth. And as you can imagine, it was a sudden death. So we weren't prepared. He wasn't ill. And so it came as quite the shock. And, it was very, very, very difficult on my son, the 3-year-old, just to have his father walk out in an ambulance and not come back home. And it was so difficult for me. And, as I wrote in the book, it's one of those things where I walked into the hospital with my husband living and breathing and walked out with a white plastic bag with his belongings. And I still remember the day as if it was yesterday. And, I needed that time to kind of make peace with it. And luckily, I was able to take that time to kind of do some soul searching and to think about how to deal with the detour, as you mentioned, and how my life would unfold and what I wanted for my sons and me, and how would I go forward. And my husband at that time was such a rock for all of us, as readers will read in the book. And so I took the time And I really did the soul searching. And that's when I came up with this framework. And it's so funny. After that period ended, I went back to work and started working again. And at the time I was writing another book, it was a memoir. And I thought, what lessons have I learned from all of this? And how would I distill this in a way that would help other people? And I sat down and I wrote this 40 Life Lessons article. And that was the viral article that I shared. And it was just a very vulnerable piece. It was so vulnerable. I didn't want anybody to see it. I kid you not. I did not share it. I did not market. I did not put it on social media. I just hid. I just figured if nobody saw it, it would be fine. And lo and behold, the editors at Medium contacted me and they said, we want this to be one of our favorite pieces for the year. And we're going to record like a audio version. And then it just took a life of its own. And I had distilled those life lessons in that article. And that's when an agent said, you need to write this book. And, my editor said, I'm seeing holistic wealth. So that framework about how I dealt with the detour is all outlined, in that article and then really fleshed out in the book. And, there's some core lessons in there that really, really stick with me even to today. And it's empowering yourself with a mindset that's not victim and blame. Mm-hmm. That is one that can empower you to get your power back and to live your life on your terms, however you want to show up in life on your terms. Because, we're moms. And, in the book, you'll go through everything that I went through in terms of walking that journey about the mom guilt and feeling inadequate and wondering what you would do. And I know that's something moms deal with on a daily basis. And for me, it was just amplified because I had just lost my husband. I was now a single mom with two boys. And I was also trying to figure out what my next steps would be. And so that was one of the major lessons about dealing with that detour is, what's that mindset that I have to empower myself with so that I'm not constantly living in the past, that I'm not constantly, dealt, like this big grief, this journey of looking back and wishing I had my life as it were before. And that's when I came up with the holistic wealth mindset, which is what I outlined in the book. And I also outlined the holistic wealth method, which also helped me, and it helps me every day since even now. And I think what's going to deplete me and what's going to enrich me. And that's the whole concept of the holistic wealth bank account, which is what's going to add to my bank account, my holistic wealth bank account, and what's going to deplete it, So I remember feeling depleted all the time as a mom, going through grief. I was breastfeeding. I was doing all of that, waking up every 2 hours to feed in the depths of grief. And I thought, I need to focus on the activities, the people, the things that will enrich me rather than deplete me. And I thought about that, in a methodical way and started focusing on the things that enriched me. And some of the things, Catherine, are some of the things you also preach, which is self-care and doing your yoga and meditation and mindfulness, really taking the time to care for yourself and doing the things that enrich you. And for me with holistic wealth, it also extends to finances, and how I spend and how I save and not being pressured or feeling pressured. Sometimes as moms, we feel pressured to be the ones to do everything. We're on the PTA meetings, we're on student council, we're bringing in freshly baked goods, and we're doing all these things. And I thought, I can't do all of this the way other mothers are doing. So how do I set myself up so that I'm having that balance in my life with the situation I'm being dealt with right now and still be able to live in an authentic way? And that's when I came up with those two things that I outline in the book. And so those were major parts of it for me, because even now, with detours and, detours will happen over and over again. we all go through disruption. And these are things that I keep coming back to constantly, is empowering myself with a mindset that enriches me, and thinking about, that holistic wealth bank account and how I enrich it and not deplete it to the point where I go into bankruptcy and I feel absolutely bankrupt, in every way, both emotionally, physically, mentally, and with, my actual finances. So those are two key themes in the book that, readers will see over and over. And I think there are two, and in the book, I give ways that, they can be applied, and how I came through that using that. But of course, there's tons of other things too that are there, for readers, for anyone who's going through a detour, going through a life-altering setback.
Yes, I definitely recommend grabbing a copy of this book. And thank you so much for sharing that. Your honesty, your vulnerability in sharing your journey and your story is so beautiful, and I'm sure so healing to other moms that are listening, and there's so much that you just said that I would love to unpack. You talked about mindset and empowering yourself and creating this life that you love, and also setting beautiful boundaries. But could you talk a little bit more? So I love, the holistic wealth, we're looking at life from all the angles, right? Because all the parts of us are really connected, even though sometimes we like to compartmentalize things. So this journey, or this perspective of looking at your life in a holistic way helps you to thrive in all the areas, right? So could you talk to us a little bit more about, in the book, you say that holistic wealth involves growing into a better version of ourselves. So could you talk to us a little bit about all of the areas that you focus on in holistic wealth, and the bank account a little more? Like, how can we make sure we're not depleted in our bank account?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, absolutely. And I love that line about holistic wealth, allowing us to grow and to become a better version of ourselves. Because what I said in chapter 1-2 of the book was that I didn't feel like I was living authentically at the time my husband died. I was, as I said previously, I was climbing the corporate ladder, which I had wanted. So it's not like I hadn't wanted that. But when I looked at my values, there was a contradiction there. Because then, yes, I wanted to do that. I wanted to be the best mom. I wanted to be the best wife. I wanted to have that balance. Yeah. But I knew I probably had to give it up if I were to climb the corporate ladder. And so there was always this tension. And I think his death allowed me to really engage in some self-examination. And that's when I realized that there were certain things that I was willing to give up. And here I was with two younger children. One was a baby. And I had to sacrifice anyway for them. And I had to give up those goals and dreams. And in doing that, I became a better version of myself. And that's how this holistic wealth framework came about too, because, in the book, I talk about the fact that these things that we think sometimes are sacrifices, they seem like setbacks in the beginning, but they're not. They're actually enriching us in a way where we become more holistically wealthy. And the good thing about it, well, for me in the beginning, is that, and this is where the whole thing becomes so interdependent, right? Is luckily I had planned ahead in my personal finances, so I could take that break. So if I wasn't on, a path anymore in one area of my life, that I could take that break, slow down, and think about what I wanted. And this is something I also want for women in terms of their finances, to be able to take control and to have that power to be able to make these decisions that can enrich us. Because if we can't make those decisions that can enrich us, then we're going to be in a problem. There's going to be a deficit. That's where we're going to be running on empty. And that's when we're going to feel depleted and end up in that kind of bankruptcy that I talk about. Before COVID, when we thought about health, self-care, it was almost like a privilege to be able to, take time off, or it's a privilege for you to be able to take a sabbatical. But now that we've gone through this experience, we're realizing this is absolutely fundamentally necessary to our mental and emotional and spiritual health.
For sure.
And so COVID-19 has just made this even more, more there for us in terms of what we need to do. And so that's the thing about becoming a better version. It's like, how am I aligning my true values with my mission? And so in chapter 3 in the book, I think it's chapter 3, I talk about a personal mission. And I outlined one for myself. And in the book, I give examples. And in the workbook, there are some case studies for the audience members who want to try to do that. And in doing that and aligning your values, you're becoming a better version, because it's not just about, I get up and I do these things on a day-to-day, but how is it leading to that mission? How is it leading to that end goal that I really want for my life, that legacy that I really want for my life? And so that's why all of this framework is such a good framework for becoming a better version. And this experience, even with the pain and tragedy, I feel blessed to be able to share this with others, because I think that this is something great that has come out of that tragedy for me, is sharing my experience and sharing what I was able to distill to help others. So I think that's the whole gist of how we become, more authentic, how we show up more authentically in our own lives, and how we become a better version.
I love that so much. I love, just as you're speaking, it's bringing tears to my eyes. I love the way that you took such, in the face of death and losing your partner, your life partner, you were able to change your perspective and live more fully, right? Like this, it's such a beautiful, your journey of growth through all of this is so heartwarming and beautiful and empowering. And I love that you share the personal mission statement. That's also something that I use with my clients, because when we can take that step back and look at things from a wider perspective, we can really direct our lives in the way that we want them to go. We may not be able to control everything that happens, but we can live authentically to ourselves and create that beautiful life. So can you talk to us more about what is the personal mission statement and how can we create one for ourselves?
Absolutely. So I first stated it in the viral article that I published, have a mission, outline a mission for yourself. Because I think, as I said, so many of us suffer through inertia, and, we're so busy in life. And some people are at the point of burnout. Like there's an epidemic of burnout. There's an epidemic of a lack of work-life balance, that we hardly have the time to think about, why am I here? What's my unique purpose and role on this earth? And it dawned on me too, in terms of developing a better version of myself, that I went back to my values. And this is one of the things that, like I tell others too, like I tell readers and certified holistic wealth consultants, that start with the values. In defining a personal mission, writing your personal mission statement. And in the Holistic Wealth Workbook, we have like a whole list of values that you can go through and check off to see if which ones align with yours. But start with the values, and then think about your story of self. And in the book, I talk about your story of self. Because, when I think about my story, for instance, I'm just giving that as an example. Catherine, I was widowed at 31. I am a trained economist. I am a mom. I have so many things in my experience that I can use to make my mission that much more impactful. And it's very, very specific to me, So, and, in chapter 5, when I talk about not comparing yourself, so like our mission statement is rooted in our story of self. And so once you have that, you don't have to think about what the other person's doing, what the other person's mission is. Am I going to, achieve this? Am I going to achieve that? Because it's all rooted in the sum of who you are. And so even if we align on certain things, then you know what? I can use my mission to help enrich yours, because we all have these different roles to play, right? And so that's the beauty of crafting a personal mission statement for yourself. And it really helps you to pinpoint where you're going, what your success goals are, and your core outcomes. But it does so much more than that. It helps us to really see what we bring and who we are and how these experiences have enriched us. And really what our purpose is. Because I think when I surveyed mine and my story of self, it became clear to me what my purpose was. This was connecting with other women and other moms, other women, and using my experience to help them through any sort of, life transitions or setbacks, anything like that. And using my own direct experience in terms of my professional background as well to try to help in whatever way I can. So that's the whole kind of gist of it, behind a personal mission statement. And of course, in the book, it's covered more fulsome. And in the workbook, there's case studies too. So yeah, and then in the book coming out in March, there's also a bit more on that, the Holistic Wealth Expanded and Updated book. So it's a critical piece. And what's funny is when people ask me, what are the micro steps I can use to start living holistically wealthy? What are if you were to give me one thing, because people ask me all the time when I do like library talks and talks elsewhere to audiences, they're like, give me one thing I can do. This is the one thing that, I think is really good as a micro step, because I think it's so easy for us to do, but it's so effective, right? And it really can turn the tide in when you're at a crossroad and you need to figure out, where do I go from here? And what is my life about? It can really renew that meaning for you and that inspiration and really give you some sense of purpose. So that's the one major thing I think, which is, so thank you for asking me that.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. So if there's a mom listening right now and she's like, this sounds amazing, but I wouldn't know where to start. So start there, right? Yeah.
Right. Start there. That's one of the micro steps, among others, that you can definitely use to make a start. The other one is I also, developed this free quiz, the personal financial identity quiz, that you've probably heard me talk a lot about, Catherine. And that's another micro step that people can take. And it's very in line with your personal mission statement, because, people are asking me now, can I do like a money mission statement as like a subcategory in my personal mission statement? And I'm like, absolutely. And knowing your personal financial identity can help you do that, because then it also helps you to be more authentic. If you're a minimalist, if you're a risk taker, if you're a maximalist, no matter what you are, and then you can start honoring your personal money story by doing that. So that's another micro step that I think something that we can all do today. These are things that we can all do now. As I'm speaking, we can start jotting down those points, these 1-2 steps that we need to take right now, that we can start making a difference in our own lives. So I love that.
Yes. Oh, that's beautiful. And I love that you have a quiz. And I love that you talk openly about finances and money, because I think as women, that's something that is changing, but often, we, don't feel so empowered in that, especially sometimes as stay-at-home moms or things like that. We feel a little bit less empowered around money. And so I love that you focus on that with women. That's such an important topic.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the book, there's lots of chapters on that too. And readers came back. And even during COVID, I didn't have a quiz before. Readers came back and they're like, you mentioned in your book that we all need to know our personal financial identities. How do we do it? And so during the first half of lockdown, I went and I created that quiz because readers came back and they're like, how do we do it? And I needed to tell them how to do it. And I sat down for months and I tested it, retested it, tested it on family members, tested it on the podcast. And so far we've had a really good response, and we're seeing trends now with the quiz. And so it's available on my website or on the Institute on Holistic Wealth website. And and people have been saying, yes, it's spot on. This is exactly me. And they've been sharing their stories. And money is one of my favorite things to talk about too. So yeah, I'm glad that readers, spurred me on to carry this even further than I thought I'd ever, carry this through. And in the new book, that will be released, it's out for pre-order now. In the new book, I have a whole chapter on that and a whole chapter on why this is so important, and my own personal story around that part of it, which wasn't, in the first book, in the first edition. So I think readers will also benefit from that.
That's amazing. And I love that you took that feedback and helped people go even deeper with it. So that's really beautiful.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah. So I did. And it's so funny when you have a book, our readers will stare you, right? Your readers will come back and they'll say, oh, I read the book and I think you should develop this certification, which I did. And at the time I had never done that before. And so it was exciting and scary at the same time. So I developed the Holistic Wealth certification program for consultants. And some of these women were already in the field delivering financial literacy programs to women, and they wanted something more. And there was a huge gap in the market because they said, as financial advisors and as women out there giving financial literacy workshops, we're not seeing the material that we want to see, but we're seeing a lot of that in your book. So I created that, and the financial identity is part of that. It's one module in that. And so they're holistic wealth consultants who are now certified, and they're going into their communities and they're working through with people, working through the different aspects of tying everything together, tying your entire holistic wealth portfolio together, because there are different pieces. And the new book also helps you do that too. Because I think, in the first book, it was mainly fleshing out the pieces of the viral article, right? And kind of fleshing it out more so people understood more fully what I meant. And the second book is really, really about, okay, how do we go even deeper into putting together a holistic wealth portfolio that each person can have to help us navigate that disruption, to help us build that life portfolio. It's like a life portfolio based on you, and really take that to the next level. So I'm really grateful for the journey and for women. And most of these women are moms who came forward, who absolutely are passionate about women and women empowerment and, and economic empowerment for women, and really helping women gain control of their time and money, which is something we've seen a lot of with the pandemic, with the great resignation wave, with women leaving their jobs because of a lack of childcare, right? With women not knowing what to do and just being frustrated with the balance and achieving that balance. And this is something that will enable women to do that too more effectively. So that's also another big piece of it that's come out through this pandemic, which is great.
Yes. Okay. So I love that you mentioned that, and that moms are really resonating with this, because when we start, because motherhood is this incredible journey, and we have this beautiful task of guiding the next generation. And so when we can empower ourselves and thrive in our own lives and create this life portfolio, like you said, we're setting this beautiful example for our children to be able to do the same, to empower them to do the same. So have you seen that with your kiddos at all? Like that things that you have been doing have been flowing into their lives and having an effect on them?
Absolutely. So it's so funny. They're actually like little crusaders now for holistic wealth. And even in our day to day, we do it very, very, like we do it slowly, but it's done in a way where they're like little lessons for the kids. And, even starting with gratitude. I posted this picture on my Instagram about the gratitude jar that we made when we were in lockdown, and we were doing online learning, and the kids would throw these tantrums when the internet would go in and out. And we made this gratitude jar just to give thanks for the little things during the day. So like we had a good day with our teachers, and we wrote, each person would write that down, whatever they were grateful for, slip it into the gratitude jar. And that's one part of it. There's so many different facets to it, to be honest. But that's one thing that always stood out to me as we went through lockdown, is instilling a sense of gratitude in them and allowing them to be able to see authentically, and exploring that who they are, and really not being ashamed to say it and to feel proud of it. And, in their creative, whether it's art or music, to be able to feel free to explore that. Because you'll see in the book too, that that's one part of how we can cope, these things that help us to cope, whether it's our hobbies, right? Or the things that we enjoy that really help us build our resilience muscles. And it's so funny you ask that question, because every time I do a library talk, parents ask me, how do I help my kids be more resilient? How do I help them? And so I've been thinking about holistic wealth in terms of kids and teens, as, especially teens have suffered so much during this pandemic. And that's one of the things that, I talk about is, not only gratitude, but helping them explore those hobbies and those things that really enrich them and give them a sense of purpose and joy. And there's so much beyond that, that's there in the book, and how parents can help instill that in their kids, in terms of even having a family mission statement, where kids know that as a family, here's what we're about, here's what we value, and here are values as a family. What do we value? And when we do our personal mission statements, that's something that we can do with the kids. Like we can extend it to a family mission statement, have the kids participate and really think about as a family what we value. And then of course there's a personal finance side of it too, with teaching kids financial literacy, which I get asked about a lot, because teachers are now integrating it into the curriculum, and they're looking for resources and to help kids. And my kids are doing it now in school. And so that's also a big part of it. I think that's come out during COVID-19 even more, is helping, with this economic recession, is helping kids in school become more aware of their personal finances and how, and how to use money and how not to, and the destructive ways that, we can do it. So that's like a big part of it. And it's something I get asked about frequently. And it's so funny though, that I think once readers start going through the book and the workbook, there's so many ideas there for translating it to a family, and translating it to kids. And there's so many concepts in there that are just they're so basic. There are things that we do all the time that we might not think about, like taking walks in nature, Catherine, and how that can impact kids and impact their mental health, and helping them get out there and helping them recognize and really, explore nature around them, and how that helps build them too, right? And then there's their relationships. So there's so many aspects of it that I'm actually, trying to put together like a holistic wealth book for kids and teens. Because I've been, lots of parents have asked, and I get asked all the time. So I think that would be great. That would be something that I'd be really, really excited to do.
It makes me so happy to hear. Like I hear when there's more talking about finances in school, because I think that's a gap that is missing in our education. And then also, I hear more and more about the teachers bringing mindfulness into the classrooms and things like that. And so beautiful. It makes me so happy. Yeah. And you're so right. Like all these parts that we're doing for ourselves can also be incorporated with our children. And gratitude is such a big one. I love that one. I love that you created a gratitude jar.
Yeah.
And I've also noticed that, prioritizing self-care in my days, we talked a little bit about self-care, but that my kids notice it too. And then they have a model, they have something to look at and see how this might look like in life, right? Like this is how I can take care of myself as well. And I would love to know, because it can be so hard as moms to prioritize that self-care time, those walks in nature, whatever fills your cup. Because we have this long to-do list. So how I would love to know like how you take time for self-care and what are some of your favorite practices?
Yeah, so absolutely. So nature is something near and dear to me. I feel like it was instrumental in terms of my own healing and my journey through grief. I feel like, and that's why there's a whole chapter in there about spending time in nature in the book, because it was so instrumental. Like I remember when I went on sabbatical and I would wake up every morning. Like the place where I lived was, it was 800 feet above sea level, was in the mountains, was beautiful. This was in Jamaica. And so, birds woke me up in the morning and I take my hikes and I hike like twice a day. And so now I still do that. Like I still wake up early in the morning and I go out and I take my nature walk, and it's unbelievable how healing it can be. I mean, you get your exercise in and you're also, becoming one, with nature, and it just fills you up, and it gives me a lot of joy personally. So that's one way that I know I personally, like, regardless of how busy I am, it's something I set aside time for. And the other thing is that because I'm a writer, I read a lot. And it's one of those things that, it's so bad that my husband has to say, no, you need to stop now. Like at some point in the night when I'm trying to read everything. But like, I love reading a lot. And to me, that's a part of, me time and the time that I take to kind of think through my day and think through, my next steps and my goals, and reading actually helps kind of solidify that for me. So that's a big part of it too. And, a lot of that happens too when I put the kids to bed. And so from many of us moms, I think it happens too when we get those glimpses of alone time and the kids are sleeping or they're out, and we take that time for ourselves. And that's what I've been able to do. But it really, really does enrich me. And so I'm hoping that, for those who are struggling with self-care and how to integrate it in your daily life. Another thing that I did a lot was meditate when I was on sabbatical. Like that was when I really learned how to meditate, really learned how to listen into my intuition and figure out my intuitive voice. And I talk about intuition a lot in the book too, because in my busyness, prior to my husband's death, I did not even realize, this thing, and it was on sabbatical. And I took the time that I really realized, and I really tuned in and realized that, sometimes being productive isn't necessarily what we need. Sometimes we just need to be still and need to be calm and to really listen it to our hearts and our soul about what, we need to do. So that also helped me. And it's so funny because that was like a transformation for me, after that experience. So I think, those are some ways that readers can incorporate that. And it's so funny in the workbook, I think there are lots of little, because it also acts like a journal, prompts and questions that can help you to integrate it more in your life, like your hobbies, and integrate different aspects of self-care in your life.
Yes, that's beautiful. Yeah, I think I love that you provide a workbook to go with the book, because a lot of times we soak in all this wisdom, but then actually cultivating it into our lives, bringing it into practice we have to act, right? We have to take an action. So doing that step of journaling and bringing yourself and your life into the process is a beautiful way to get started. So I love that you have that piece with your book. And yeah, so this has been such an amazing conversation, and I am so grateful to you for sharing your journey so openly and all of your wisdom and your tips. And I love asking this question because the answers just are always so beautiful and heartwarming. And I would love to know yours. So if you have been on this amazing journey, this heart-wrenching journey at times, this growth journey, if you could go back and tell Keisha anything before this big detour happened in your life, what would you share with her?
Wow. Such a deep question. And I love it because, it's so funny. I write in my book, and I don't know if you've reached that part yet, where I think about the little girl with the ponytails. And when I think about her, that's when the tears start tumbling down, because, I think about how naive and how rose colored, that little version of me was. And so if I could go back and tell her one thing, I'd tell her that, no matter what happens in life, that she's special and unique, and not to compare her journey with anyone else's, because even though that journey might be filled with detours and roadblocks and, hills and valleys, that, that journey was going to build her into something better and wiser and make a difference in this world. So I think that's something that, readers will also see in the book when I talk about that little girl, because I remember when, in the early days of grief, I think that was the time when I would think about the little girl, little me, not knowing this would happen to me at 31. And I was just past 30 when it happened. So it felt like I had just graduated school. It felt like I had just started life, so young and going through this. And when I thought about that little girl, it would always bring tears. It was always bring tears when I thought about her. And so I think that's what I definitely tell her about her journey. Because I know that's one thing that I also grappled with, about the journey and how do I, especially in the early days, how do I come to grips with this journey and what do I do with it? Where do I go with it? And so, but it's turned out to be a blessing, and just being here talking to you and seeing your reaction, Catherine, and seeing how much, this has impacted you, and, and seeing your reaction makes me realize how special it is that I'm able to share it with others. And so, yeah, that's what I would say. And, but yeah, I like that question because that's something I spoke a lot about in the book, seeing, always remembering the little me and thinking about her and thinking about, wow, just not knowing how life turns out. And so these lessons, I think, are so good for all of us and to pass on to our kids. And that's one of the things I think that's important to pass on to our kids at a young age. Just letting them know, no matter what happens, you're here for a purpose and a reason. And it might get tough. There might be losses, but there will be gains, and you'll come out of it better and stronger, and you will build your resilience. And I had this conversation with my son just last night, his team, his soccer team, went to the semifinals and lost. And he cried and cried and cried. And, this is the same conversation that I had with him was, like there will be these times where you have those wins and you have those losses, but just look at how far you've come and look how far you were able to get. So I think that's something that we definitely should instill, because I think we just help our children prepare, better for the detours up ahead, which is always better, right? So thank you for that question.
Yeah, that was such a beautiful response. And so much of what you said, I think so many of us I need to hear more often, that we are special and that everything happens on this journey to help us grow. And it can be a healing and beautiful journey if we allow it to be. And I love that you talk about comparison too, because that's something that's so easy to fall into, especially these days, with social media.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing all of that.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. You're welcome. And I think, even for Instagram and there was a study about young people, especially young girls, comparing themselves on Instagram, seeing their friends and the lifestyle and the clothes and everything. It's so important for us to be able to talk to our kids about these things too. So.
Absolutely. And this was wonderful. Can you let us know where we can find your book and where we can find you online?
Yeah, sure. So the book is available everywhere online. It's on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, Target, everywhere online. And the new book, which is the expanded and updated version of Holistic Wealth, will be coming out in March, but it's available for pre-order right now online. And so folks can find it there. And my website is KeishaBlair.com. And of course, there's lots of resources there too. And I'm available on social media. I'm at Keisha Blair on Instagram and on Twitter, and on Facebook, I'm at Keisha Blair Author. So I love hearing from readers. So feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to hear from you.
Oh, awesome. I will include those in the show notes so that everybody can find you and get a copy of your book. Thank you again for taking this time to talk with me today.
Thank you so much, Catherine. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining me, Mama. I'm over here smiling from ear to ear and giving you a big virtual hug. I love spending this time with you. You are amazing for showing up and carving out this space to nourish your soul. If you are loving the Soul Care Mom podcast, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. And if you are ready to start your mornings feeling calm and energized, get the Kickstart Your Calm Morning Guide, a self-care morning ritual for moms, as a free gift when you join the Soul Care Mom community. Head over to soulcaremom.com/kickstart and enter your email address to get your free gift and start feeling like a calm mom today. Sending you so much love, Mama.